Is a marriage complete only when there are male offspring, or are girls good enough? When this preoccupation, this obsession with sons is carried to extreme lengths, what is the kind of damage that is unleashed on the women involved, the wives and the daughters in particular? Let me share with you a story in which many of these elements are present, and let's try and find some answers. Saroja, also known as Saru, spent her early childhood in Nagari, a small town on the Tamil Nadu-Andhra Pradesh border. Her father was a man of leisure and didn't worry too much about his family. Since Saroja grew up in a large extended family, she didn't feel this lack of drive on the part of her father. When Saroja completed her schooling, her father's sister felt that she needed to go in for higher education in order to secure her future. Saroja was one of two sisters, having lost an only brother to one of those dreaded infectious diseases. Saroja was sent to Madras, and she came to live with her uncle, a well-known lawyer, and his family. She completed her graduation and went on to do her post-graduation and qualified to be a scientist. She was one of the first few women graduates in the family, and that was a source of happiness to all. Towards the end of her education, Saroja disclosed to her uncle and family that she was in love with a fellow student. All hell broke loose. Is this what we brought you from Nagari for? What will people think? I hope you've not made any promises to this man. What kind of a chap is he? Do you know anything about his family? Questions flew thick and fast. Saroja maintained a stoic silence. She even went on a hunger strike. Finally, her uncle took a very clinical decision and told her, Saroja, I only brought you from Nagari to Madras to finance your education in order that you may support yourself and your sister who's a school dropout. I'm only your local guardian and not your father. You may please write to your father and seek his permission, and if he's okay with you marrying this man, I have no problems. Saroja did as she was told, and since her father had no objection, she married Karthikeyan in due course. Saroja left Madras for Trichy, which is where Karthikeyan had landed a job. Soon Saroja became pregnant. The pregnancy was fine until the very last term. She even worked till the very last day. But things took a sad turn when Saroja delivered a stillborn male child. Saroja was deeply upset. She kept blaming herself for not being able to bear a live male child because she knew in her heart that that's what her husband and his family wanted, especially so because he was the only son and the apple of their eye. She got over this traumatic experience in time and went on to conceive again. But as luck would have it, she suffered a miscarriage within weeks. Saroja was devastated. She drowned herself in work and tried not to focus on the subtle taunts of her mother-in-law. Fortunately, Saroja conceived again, and this time she took every precaution possible and carried the baby to term. Her cup of happiness was full when she delivered, but not for her husband and their family, because this time it was a girl. The in-laws made no secret of their hatred for girl children. Her grandmother would openly tell the young child, you know, if only your little baby brother had survived, we would be a complete family now. I wish your mother had been more careful the first time." A few years later, there was an opportunity for Saroja to do her PhD, and there was an opening under a professor in Madras. She sought her husband's permission with some trepidation, but surprisingly, he agreed and let her relocate. So Saroja was back in Madras with her daughter in her uncle's family. Her husband would visit occasionally. The months went by. Towards the end of her stay in Madras, Saroja fell horribly ill. Her uncle and their family nursed her back to health, but her husband was secretly disappointed because he knew that his wife would not be able to bear him any more children. And this meant that any hope of a son in the future was totally nil. Shortly after, Saroja left Madras for Trichy, and when she got there, she could sense that things were not the same. "I thought you'd be happy to see me. I've been away for 2 years and I've recovered by the grace of God from that terrible illness," she said to her husband. He did not say a word. Even her in-laws were somewhat cold. Maybe they've gotten used to my not being around and I just need to give them some time, she thought. That night, she snuggled up to her husband in bed. He just turned away. Saroja shed a tear quietly. What has come over him? She wondered. In the days that followed, they shared the same bed but turned away from each other. And then, one day, as if to confirm her worst fears, Karthikeyan said, "Saroja, I don't know how to tell you this, but there is someone else in my life right now. She is a student and she might be carrying my child." Saroja felt the earth come crashing down on her. "How could you do this? Did all this happen because I was away? What will happen to me and my daughter? Where will we live?" "You don't have to worry about all that. I will take care of all of you," Karthikeyan said. "We can all live together in one house." "How can I share my husband with another woman? Would any lady consent to that?" she asked. "Saroja, why are you overreacting? Don't our gods, Lord Muruga, Lord Balaji, and Surya Bhagavan have more than one consort? I am assuring you that you will be taken care of. I have spoken to Sumi about this and she has agreed." Saroja knew that when her husband had made up his mind, there was no stopping him. He was pig-headed and opinionated. And suddenly, she knew where all this was coming from. It was that magnificent obsession with a male child that had led to all this. She was emotionally drained. Saroja cried herself to sleep that night and every other night. A million questions popped up in her head. How would she break the news to her daughter and friends and family? What would colleagues say? She tried focusing on work and hated coming home. Finally, D-Day was announced. "Saroja, I want you to be there at the wedding. I don't want to do this behind your back," Karthikeyan said. How could I? She thought. Mentally, she weighed her options in her mind. Should I just hang myself? But then what would happen to my precious daughter? Or should I just walk out on this man with my daughter? I shudder to think of what all those wagging tongues would say. that I drove him to this, that I was up to no good, and that I would never be able to manage on my own. So Saroja swallowed her pride and her self-respect and attended the wedding like a zombie. She even faked a few smiles. Actually, ever since I suffered that setback in health, I've been urging my husband to look for a second wife. She lied to a few relatives. Soon Sumi's pregnancy was officially announced. The in-laws could barely contain their excitement. The months went by. After a lot of build-up and hype, their hopes were dashed to the ground when a baby girl was born. But there was still hope because Sumi was still young. Ironically, ditto with pregnancy too. The third time around, they had all psyched themselves into believing that it was going to be a boy. Saroja didn't want to be unkind, so she just prayed for a healthy baby for her sister. Delivery time, anxious moments, emergency C-section, baby number 3, also a girl. Life had come full circle. Saroja was avenged in a way. For after all, wasn't it that magnificent obsession with sons that had led to all of this? The pain, the hurt, the humiliation, the second marriage. What of the family, you might ask? Well, life goes on for the one big joint family, but there's guilt all around. Sumi feels that it's because she wronged Karthikeyan's first wife, Saroja, that she was punished with 3 daughters. The 3 girls try to be extra nice to Saroja, whom they address as Amma, while Sumi is Mummy. Saroja, for her part, has turned philosophical. If this is how my life was meant to be, I may as well accept it. In all fairness, my husband doesn't discriminate between his 2 wives, whether it's with his time or saris or anything else. And what's more, I have 2 grandchildren by my daughter who are such a source of joy. I have found some peace within myself. But like every other woman, there are times when Saroja wishes that her husband would woo her the way he once did, and that she would be the only wife in his life. She also wishes that had he valued their daughter as much as he did the son that he always wanted but never could father, things would have been different. People like Saroja and her family are everywhere around us, which is why we live in a society in which we deify boys and devalue and discriminate against our girls. We place our sons on a pedestal but deprive our girls of a level playing field. Is it a good thing to deny them a fair chance just because they will marry and eventually go to another house, or because they're not physically as strong, or because society says there are certain things that they cannot do? Attitudes must change. Celebrate daughters as much as you do your sons. Celebrate girls as much as you do boys. End gender violence.